guys, and welcome to the third episode of Ben's Broadway Blab with an amazing guest today, George Aboud, who is the violinist of the band's Visit, a crazy talented human being. If you have seen the show, you know exactly what I mean, or if you've listened to the cast recording and heard that amazing violin at the beginning, then you definitely know what I mean. If you have not, definitely go check out the cast recording. And if you are able to, definitely go see the band's Visit on Broadway. It won 10 Tony Awards, and I love it, and George is awesome, and I hope you enjoy the following podcast. Thank you for your patience on more episodes. It takes a while to get guests and get it together and get timing. I'm trying as hard as I can, and I hope you guys are enjoying the content. In the meantime, thank you very much. And I hope you guys enjoy the latest episode. Hi guys, so I'm here with George Aboud from Band's Visit. He is absolutely wonderful and has agreed to do this podcast with me today. Hello, George.
Hi, Ben.
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
Yes, so this is the third episode I've done. I've done one with Katie Garrity from Groundhog Day, and then one with Katrina Yauke from Great Comet, and that's been really exciting, but I've been trying to get guests so far, so you're my third guest on this podcast.
Oh, wonderful. Three's a lucky number.
Honestly, though. Yes, exactly. Hey, so, it's National Book Lovers Day.
Really?
Yes. Right? It's a bit off topic for a theatre podcast, but what's your favourite book?
Oh, Lord. I'm not going to be able to answer that, but I do love to read poetry. So I guess if I am able to read it all, it's probably books of poetry. Though an acting book I like is called Letters to an Actor by William Redfield, who was a wonderful actor back in like the 40s through 70s, and it chronicles his time in the John Gielgud, Richard Burton production of Hamlet that they did on Broadway in the mid-60s, and yeah, that's a good book.
Oh wow, nice. Do you ever tend to read more like script type things for shows that you're not actually working on, just to read them? Are you interested in that whatsoever?
No, I guess I don't do that, though maybe I should. I really like to read short things. I'm not very good at reading fiction, and it doesn't interest me as much. I like biographies if there's one that I'm partial to the person, or I like poetry because I can digest it and I can think about it or pore over it because it's smaller.
Yeah, I quite like that. I enjoy some poetry. The thing is, now with a lot of schooling and things, since I have 6 days of school a week, I don't have so much time to read. Yeah, I don't get too much time to read, or at least read the kind of things that I'd like to read. I have a lot of books on the shelf that I definitely need to read, but I'd say there's a book called All the Bright Places, which is currently my favorite book, but I read that ages ago, and I read it like 3 times, and it's very interesting, and it's about it's quite complex, but it's about this like guy and this girl, and they all have like their own issues, and he's very eccentric, and she's one of a twin, but like she's lost her twin. And it's all this interesting thing of them becoming friends and being partnered on a school project, and, you know, their own internal struggles and how they become friends, and through this project have like a lot of fun, and like different things happen, but it's also quite sad.
Oh, that sounds very complex. I like that.
It's complex. It's really good. They've got quite a lot of it's actually being made into a movie now. I think they just cast it, but that's exciting. Hopefully that is, you know, done justice to the book.
I hope so.
Yeah, because often, do you find with any movies in particular that, like, I know you mainly read poetry, but, like, do you feel like some, or maybe even with shows, like musical shows, some musicals to movies, or some books to movies, it can kind of lose some of the magic through that, like, turning it into a movie?
Totally, and certain things lend themselves to different mediums, and certain things perhaps can branch out and cover several mediums, but it's kind of just like the integrity of the story. So if whoever's creating it has a vision to translate that to a different medium, then at least there's something interesting in that, rather than just doing it for the purpose of doing it. You know, that usually makes for a lackluster or something that doesn't honor the original intentions of the source material.
Yeah, definitely. I think also with there's also some issues with celebrities being cast in either musicals or musical movies, because sometimes they are like amazing, but also sometimes it can be in specific musicals they're only cast so that people will come to see the show, and they don't always do the material justice.
Oh, that's a whole nother problem.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I found that in a few shows, but I saw. Do you know of a show called Killer Joe?
Yes.
Yes, so that's on in the West End right now until August 18th, which is really cool, but it closes before I get back to England. And
Orlando Bloom, right?
Yeah, right. But I knew he was in it, but he's the only person advertised on the posters, but there are actually some other English TV people and involved in that. And this guy called Adam Gillen, who's really amazing, and he was Amadeus at the National Theatre for 2 years in a row. Exactly, and they don't put his name on like the posters or anything. It's all Orlando Bloom, which I understand for marketing, but also it's not even like in small print their names. And I'm like, I went to see the show because he was in it.
Yeah.
Because I was very excited for that, and he was really good. And Orlando was also really good. So he wasn't actually one of the cases in which like there's a celebrity and they don't do it justice, but like that does happen quite a lot. But also it's a shame that they weren't given so much credit on like the posters, because some of the people that may have liked those actors separately would want to see it, and they lost that kind of audience.
Well, of course. I mean, they're kind of blinded to the certain facts like that, marketing people sometimes, so danger.
Yeah, definitely. Also with stage doors, like especially with celebrities, it's very crowded, but I found in England, it's so completely different to Broadway and New York and their entire attitude to stage doors and how many people know about it. Because, like, last year, I didn't even know that was a thing. And I had loved Broadway, and I was like, oh, what a great show. And then I just left.
Yeah.
And I didn't know stage door was a thing. And then my friend was like, oh, do you want to go stage door something? I was like, what is that? And now, like, I love doing it, but it's completely different to the West End. The West End is, like, way more chill. There's, like, 5-10 people maximum outside of a show, but then like with Orlando Bloom there's like quite a few more, but even less than with like Dear Evan Hansen on Broadway or something,
right.
or with Band's Visit. Like there's less people just because it's not so much a thing.
Yeah, it's not really a problem as long as people are respectful and just come to say hello or something. But,
yeah, but, I mean,
if they demand something of you, then that's not good.
Yeah, that's the thing I kind of dislike about Broadway stage doors, and how I'm really grateful for like knowing some people who can get me backstage, because also like it's not that nice if it's very crowded and shovey and kind of, and it's also rather impersonal, which usually if I want to meet like an actor, I'm not going to be like, oh, you need to talk to me for 15 minutes, but if I have that opportunity, I'd much rather do that than say like, oh, sign this picture and then like go away kind of thing.
Exactly.
Which is so much weirder. Have you had any like nice experiences or like funny or like disrespectful experiences at stage door that you can remember?
Yes, I've had all the three. I don't know if I have any particular anecdote that's like terribly amusing, but I guess describing like different instances with people, I love people who are very open if they want to say something nice, or if they're kind of, they say hello, thanks for coming out, or if they tell us how they enjoyed the performance or enjoyed our individual performance. I never mind that, and that's always charming. If people don't say anything at all, or are kind of nonchalant but just like expect you to sign something, I don't really like that.
No.
I feel like they're like, yeah, sign my thing. I'm like, what do you care? You know, they're probably just gonna sell it on eBay anyway. I'm like, what are you doing here?
Well, actually, I went to the Bryant Park thing, which you weren't at. How absolutely dare you? But that was actually like reasonably fun. I'm going to another Bryant Park thing with like actually all my friends in it for Be More Chill. It's their opening night tonight. I'm very proud of them.
Oh, so sweet! Yeah. So I got a lot of friends involved with that. It's great.
Really? Who do you know?
I know Will Rowland. I know Jen Tepper. I know the director.
Yes.
Max. There's a lot of great theater people in that, and it's just a wonderful thing that, like, made out of love and made out of, like, love of the craft and putting a lot of great actors together and performers to make something really cool, and they're getting to a good level of theater where a lot of people can see it, so that's always to be commended and look forward to.
Yeah, I know all those people too. I actually got to intern at the show for a little bit, I interned at Dear Evan Hansen a while ago with Will, and so I know him, and then I know Max, who actually got me to intern there, and I was on book for like the tech and stuff. And Jen is wonderful; she's a lovely.
Oh, how
person.
cool! Yeah, that's a great experience.
Yeah, so I'm so proud of them tonight. But that's really exciting, and I can't fully remember why I brought that up, but
we're talking about the stage door, I think.
Oh,
or
yeah,
going
well,
back or connecting with people in different ways.
Yeah. I mean, stage door at Be More Chill particularly is pretty crazy, just because the fans they're lovely, but it's like it's a very crowded stage door as well.
It's hip shows get more people. Like that's why Dear Evan Hansen,
True.
Or like Great Comet, and then like older people shows like my show, you get the hip, you get some hip young people, but it's not going to be overwhelming like it is at Frozen or Blockbusters. I have buddies. One of my buddies, John Riddle, who's in Frozen. I went to meet him for lunch one day, and like the stage door is like literally an event for them.
Oh wow.
They have to like line up, and the kids are lined up, and the security's very tight. And they're like, one picture, one autograph, blah blah blah. Ours is a little more homey advanced visit because we don't get that many people. We get a good crowd, but we can just kind of visit a little bit more with the people, which is nice.
That's nice. I mean, I stage doored like Boys in the Band one time, and that's very much. There was a guy in a trench coat who was like pushing us back, and he's like, move behind the barrier. If you don't go behind the barrier, and we're like, well, the thing is, people are branching out into the back, so you can't get anything signed, or you can't like say hello or say like I appreciate whatever if you're like 5 people back. So the barrier ended, and like Andrew Rannells came out, and I really love and respect him as like a person, as an actor, and I was trying to get out, and like I'm obviously this like 14-year-old kid trying to push out and just be like, oh hey, for like 1 second, and we were like at the end of the line. It wasn't like it was going down the street, it wasn't like we went that far past the barrier, but the guy was like behind the barrier, and I thought he was about to like push me out of the way and I was like, I swear to God, I just want to say hi to Andrew. So luckily I got to for like 2 seconds, which is fair enough because it's so busy. But like it can get crazy with some shows. Oh
yeah, that one seems very intense. I walked by and I was like, oh dear God, this would happen when you got like big stars in the show.
Oh yeah. Oh, I remember why I brought up Be More Chill. It was because I'm seeing that in Bryant Park, and I was going to tell you about Bands Visit Bryant Park. So I went with that, and that's kind of like, everybody's pretty tired, to be honest, because it's sound check, and it's quite early in the morning, and you guys have a show in the evening, and it's just like, kind of like, oh, let me rest, essentially, because it's a lot of like waiting. And there were quite a lot of people waiting during sound check to get stuff signed, but they weren't that respectful about it. Like there was this woman who didn't even know who was in the cast, and I think she's been to stage door a few times. Like Katrina and Itai mentioned that like something was going on with that, because some people had come and said like, oh, can you please sign this, or this woman was like, oh, are you in the cast? She said that to me when I was waiting for them.
Yeah, like they don't know what's going on, and that like, just like is so uncharming.
Yeah, I'm like, have you seen the show? Like,
they just think like it's just something to do. They're like, oh, this show, someone else told me there's something important about it, so give me your autographs.
I think that's
such bullshit, man.
Honestly, it's complete. It's like really, really silly. But I think it seemed like she could have been getting something for like a nephew or like a child of hers. But I was like, I was giving her the benefit of the doubt, but it didn't seem like it was. She, like,
no, you would say that if it were.
Yeah, and then somebody was trying to get like Katrina's attention, and I was just like, we're gonna leave it alone because it's like 11 a.m. and they're just like, oh my, can you tell them to turn around? And I'm like, just let them be. They're just trying to do a performance right now. It's like somebody, even if they were your friend, like if they came back during intermission, which can sometimes work, but like. If that's the only time they can come back. But that usually doesn't, if they're trying to bother you either like at the beginning of a show, like if somebody was to come in at half hour and be like, sign this, it's like kind of like that. But it was obviously less pressure because it was Bryant Park, but it was still like a bit much.
Yeah, I think the whole point of the stage door to me is like for people who are particularly moved by the show or have the capacity to be moved by theater, or young artists or other artists, I want to connect with them. If there's like a young artist and are seeing the show and there's something special about it that like influences them or moves them to continue on or like to keep going or to keep at it. That's what I like to go out there and see. Not these people who just want autographs.
Yeah, I think that's quite annoying. But also, a lot of people who really like musicals, like they're people my age, and a lot of them have like whatever issues they have, but also like anxiety or just general, you don't like being pushed about or in a crowded area at stage door in a very pressurized environment. So sometimes, they really want to go, but they don't get the time. So they might be pushed ahead of by the people who are just like, sign this.
Totally, they are.
Exactly. Which is just like really annoying and sad for like the rest of us. So like that's why I'm like really glad I get to like know people and have been, working my way through and like learning about new shows and meeting newer people, so that I get to have a more personal experience, which I think is really, really cool.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. So this is great. Also, back to the reading question at the beginning. Like linking to that, what other hobbies outside of the show do you have?
Well, the funny thing about being an artist is kind of your hobbies are your life rather than your separation from your life. Though I guess that's not necessarily true for all artists, but for me it kind of is true. Because I guess I do have friends who are actors who do woodworking or needlepoint or running or, you know what I mean? But like anything I like to do, I kind of pursue it within my artistic work.
Yeah.
So I like to play music. I like to act. I like to craft stories. I like to write. I like to write poetry. I like to write scripts. All whatever. I like to do it all.
That's awesome. Well, like, what kind of stuff do you like? Everything you write as well?
Yes. Well, I mean, you kind of like get to that point, especially if you like cannot find you, because you can. It's very difficult to find like a whole fulfillment pursuing life as an actor, because you're very much dependent most of the time on other people and other people putting you in their work or creating work for you or content for you or giving you the opportunities. So you kind of get to the point where you're like, well, I want to create opportunities for myself, or I want to express this about myself that no one else seems to care or know about me or wants to hear from me, or they have not created a piece that exhibits that. So you kind of get into that. So I like to write. I don't really know how to categorize it, so. but I do like to write, and I love to play the oud. That kind of clears my head. I play one song in the show, but Harvey Valdez plays for the whole show, which is an Arabic instrument, and it's been played by 4 generations of my family, and it's definitely a way you can kind of converse with your own soul, or like go through your own thoughts, and utterly private, because no one understands what you're talking about. You know what I mean? When you play music, no one knows what you're talking about.
Yeah.
If you're expressing something, they just go, oh, how beautiful, blah blah blah. You know what I mean? But you could be raging.
Yeah.
But if you rage with the English words, people are like, shut the hell up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you mean. I mean, a lot can be conveyed through instrumental pieces, and also it can become a lot more personal if you write it yourself. And I definitely get what you mean with, you're waiting for work that fits you, and you're like, oh, I could fit this character maybe because, whatever. But if you create something, you're like, yeah, this is me, or this is something that I could do, then that could be a lot, like, more helpful and like more personal. Like especially with what really got me into obviously band's style of music and all the instrumental and that, like I absolutely love that, but particularly like what got me really into like classical music was when I saw Amadeus, and I saw it twice. I saw it twice in like 3 days, and what happened was I loved it so much. But what happened was I booked it ages in advance because I was like absolutely in love with the movie, and I was like, oh, the play adaptation is going to be amazing. And I was right. And I went and I booked it, and then turns out my school was going on a trip with like the year above, and and they were like, "Oh, do you want to come?" And it was actually 2 days after I had originally booked it, and it was only like £15, which is like $20, I think, like or less than that for the whole trip, and a train ticket, which is usually like would be like $10 in itself to get up to London and sit right at the back of the theater, but it was like a sloped theater on the on like the top area, so it was still really good. And I saw it like a couple days before, like a few rows back because I had booked it myself. But then I sat at the back, and it was still like really beautiful, and the way the music was conveyed, and also like the way that it went into like in the movie, but also especially in the play, linked with his life, so you could tell. And Salieri was commenting on how like the moments of his life had influenced the piece. So when he was like breaking down, obviously the Requiem is very sad and intense and things like that, and then the comedy is more upbeat in a stage in his life when he was trying to be positive, but things were kind of going like downhill and like various things like that. But also the cool thing was, the second time I saw it, we paid very, very little because we were a student group and we were sitting right at the back, but I saw like 2 free seats, 4 seats in, and at the interval I just went down and I took those free seats in the stalls because nobody was using them. So I've done that a few times, but that was the furthest I had ever gone, like, physically downstairs to sit in another row, because I loved it so much. And it was, like, so enjoyable, especially from up close, because Adam Gillan, who was in Killer Joe, and he was Amadeus, his conducting was so funny, but it was also really great. And his, like, first line on stage is him chasing his girlfriend, and it's meow. And he's, like, playing a cat and mouse game with his girlfriend, and it's so funny. And Salieri is, like, sitting there, like, what are you doing? And just, like, the humor and the intensity, and he has to, like, break down on stage was, like, also, like, truly commend in him as, like, an actor. And to do that every night, and he'd done it 2 years in a row, because it was the same production, 2 years in a row, which is, like, crazy. But, like, not for an entirety of 2 years, like, 1 year for a couple months, and then a gap, and then it came back the next year, but still, like, and he was a lovely person, so that was really cool as well.
That's really terrific.
Yeah, so I've gotten, like, really into some of that classical music, because they also added some modern elements, which was interesting. Some of it wasn't always necessary, but it was quite funny, or just, like, weird, or showed to, like, spread a message, like, of, Salieri murdered Mozart. It was showed that it was spreading through, like, text message, something like that. Yeah, but it was still based in, like, the 1800s, but beforehand, like, the orchestra were all dressed in black, and they had phones, and various characters, like the Vitticelli or whatever, they had, exactly. They had, like, golden winged sneakers, and, like, gold jackets, like, really silly things. And,
that's cool.
yeah,
I like that.
And they had various, like, Amadeus's costume was also really cool. And he had Doc Martens on, and, like, a really old jacket, but with lots of vibrant colors. So, like, pink jacket, blue waistcoat, or a blue jacket, pink waistcoat with, like, gold flecks and whatever. And it was just, like, also really beautiful outfit. And during a New Year's party scene, they played one of his songs. Let me try and find it, but in the background, there was a guy in a sumo suit, and somebody in, like, an astronaut suit, and, like, really random things. The song was Symphony Number 25 in G minor.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, bum, 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 and they had that, but they gave it more of, like, a bass with the orchestra on stage, and the people dancing to it like it was a song at a party, like a dancing song.
Like it was just a song being played at a party today.
Exactly, so that's exactly what it was, and then I got, like, really into it, that because of, like, the way the scene was, and how it, like, broke up, and into dialogue, and all this, like, super interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Which was just a really cool thing, and that got me really into instrumental stuff. But, like, how long have you been playing, like, do you play any other, like, how many instruments do you play?
So I come from a family of musicians. I have 2 older brothers and my father, and we all play music. And we kind of had a band when we were kids, and we'd go play parties and weddings and church events and family functions, and we'd play Arabic music together. My father played the oud, and my eldest brother played the piano, the keyboard. My middle brother played the drabaki, which is the Arabic drum that they play in the band's visit as well. And I played the violin, and we play at all these parties, and it would be the best time. And that's kind of what really got me into performing in the first place, was just like this idea that like you could just lift people up and you could bring people together like instantly, and there was like this instant connection between all people through this entertainment, this like wordless entertainment as music was, and that you could be entertaining and people just feel good about it, and it really made the party. You know what I mean? Like I've been to so many parties without music, and music changes the whole thing.
Music changes so many things, and I live my life with like a lot of music.
Yeah.
And it's like super important, and it can completely change the mood. Like, especially in a movie that I really love, and I'd love to see a production of it, but I haven't yet. Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Nice, yeah.
Which the Disney movie is amazing, and the instrumental in all of that is crazy, and it's like church bells, and the message in it is also like really good, and orchestration is amazing, and like choral kind of operatic voices in the background, and like I never cry at anything, but I've cried like every time I've seen that movie. Like, and I've seen it so many times, and it's just because of the instruments and the orchestration, it really changes your mood and really gets you so into it. Whereas if it was without the instruments, it would be completely different and nowhere near as powerful.
That's exactly right, and I think that's one of the powerful things about like Band's Visit, and that it would be irreparably different if it didn't have the instruments.
Definitely, because I love that it's so subtle and kind of slow moving, which is obviously how that town is, and how the people have grown to become, you know. But then with all the music, it shows the mood, and then also with the beautiful instrumentals during like the scene changes, it adds like so much to it, and it's like that's obviously a massive part of it.
Totally, and I think it could even be integrated even more, but this is what we got.
Yeah, but I quite like the silent bits, because obviously it's still like gets you in. You know, you're sitting there in the silence of the theater, which you don't get much, because a lot of shows are just moving around constant speed all the time. They don't usually take a breather. It's quite like a chill, relaxing thing, and you just kind of get to. And the thing of theater a lot of the time is you go out to have fun, or you go out to relax, and it's a very calming show, which I think is good. But obviously, everything could use more instrumentation in most aspects of life.
Yeah.
But with the Band's Visit, and with how how all of you guys play together, and you mentioned quite a lot of the instruments were used like when you were younger within your family. Did you, when you joined the production of the Band's Visit, did that remind you of when you would play at houses or people's parties or kind of thing?
Initially it did. When I was first getting into it, I was like, oh, this is very similar to that. And then kind of working with Yazbek to develop these instrumental sections, we tried to, harness a lot of that old Arabic style into the instruments with blending his aesthetic for music as well. So yes, though it's not as measured in the Band's Visit. It's very measured. It's limited, which is not as much like Arabic music, but it has to be because it's theatrical. You know what I mean? Like it's like, oh, we have to play this in 2 minutes, and you each get a 16-bar solo, and it's not free. In the Arabic music, people would take longer solos, and there'd be more breath in there, but that's a different thing.
Yeah, true. Obviously, because it's theater, it has to be timed, and people expect to get out at a certain time. It's not as free, like, unless it's like, this isn't, but, unless it's like improvisational theater.
Exactly. So it took a while to get used to, me and the other 4 guys, to get used to the idea of having to confine, like this one to jam, structure, and like put it into a structure rather than a more,
more
freer,
like
sure.
Yeah, like more of a free flowing music of whatever you wanted, kind of thing.
Yeah.
With I know when you guys, I think after the Tonys or a bit after, I know some of you guys went outside stage door and actually played some stuff. Was that freestyle? Because it seemed rather.
Well, we did that in the early days too.
Oh, nice.
And we played outside for the people. And the weird thing with that is, well, first of all, it's hard to play outside in New York City streets because it's loud as hell.
Mm.
And my instrument is not loud. The violin is not loud. And the oud is not loud. But the drum is sure as hell loud. You know what I mean? So it's, I don't know. It's not my favorite thing to do. And then everyone has their phone out because they're filming it because they can't imagine that music has ever been played in the world. And so then no one can like react because no one's reacting because they're just saving this to like watch it later.
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
It's crazy, but yes, it was. That was just a comment on the annoyance of those events, even though your question was about like the freeness of the form. So it was definitely more free. We got to you take longer solos because you dictate your own solo in Arabic music. If it's an improvisation, and then you end it, and then the group goes back to like the refrain, and then it leads into the next one. So at least it's that, but I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to play on the damn streets.
Yeah. I mean that is definitely difficult. But also with people with their phones, like I go to 54 below a lot, and I film it. But what I do is I like for specific things, so especially if like my friends are in it, I film some of it because to be honest, I do have like severely short-term memory. So I do want to like relive it, but I'm not holding my phone and sitting there. I leave it on the table and like on low brightness, nobody can see what's going on, and it's totally allowed in 54 below. So I can relive it, but I'm also in the moment because the issue with phones and stuff, and the issue with, people, especially in that scenario, getting out their phones is they're not living in the moment because they're just watching it through that camera, which happens a lot nowadays, and I can get it from both sides because it can be quite annoying, but I also get how people want to relive it, but it's also, quite counterproductive if you're seeing something live, especially theatre, which was made to be live, and right there, then that can be like rather disturbing or annoying, especially if people are filming a show, like a Broadway show, and in a theatre.
Oh yeah, which they are all the time.
Oh yeah, I mean, like a lot of people want professionally recorded productions, and if there were, quite a few of the people would be like, I'd like to see the professionally recorded one, and if I can, I'd love to see the actual show itself, because a lot of the people, or like the real fans or the real lovers of musical theatre really want but aren't able to get over that. Like a lot of my friends in England, they love Broadway shows and they'd love to see stuff, but they're just not able to financially or for whatever reason, so they would like professional recordings, and I can understand that. But the problem with bootlegs or people filming during a performance or being disruptive during a performance is that it disrupts everybody else.
Totally. It's almost a lose-lose. It's really difficult because you do want people to have the opportunity to see things that aren't able to, but then if the performers are inhibited or distracted in any way because of this, then it harms what you're going to see anyway for everybody.
Yes, it harms you. Yeah, exactly what you're seeing, even if the performers don't notice, which they usually pretty much always do, because it's a very dark and out theatre, so you can't always see faces, but you can definitely see like a light on somebody's phone, because usually even the people that are doing it, they're not sneaky about it. It's very like full brightness on the phone and let's film it very clearly, or they're just texting or something, which is the worst. Yeah, and that can happen, and then it can inhibit the performance and just like you watching it, which is so silly. Like I was at Aladdin, and my friend is Aladdin, and I was like, yeah, and then there was this dad who was out with his children, and he was just Googling restaurants during the show. And I'm like, what are you doing?
They're at a theme park, like they don't even think.
Yeah, exactly, which I think is ridiculous. And I'm like, these were, especially on Broadway, like I see it so much less on the West End. And the seats are so much cheaper. Like, you're not spending as much money as well. Like, obviously you shouldn't do it anywhere, but if you're spending that much money on a seat, don't ruin the experience. You shouldn't do it anywhere. But especially, they're like, oh, I paid $300 for the seat, but I'm going to go do something that I could do anytime, anywhere, on my phone right now.
And, I mean, it says a lot about our different cultures.
Oh, honestly. But I also I love the theater, but I get loving to relive it, but it's also just so beautiful to just sit there and just be in the moment and watch a performance. And it's so live, because like I said, I love stuff to be rather personal, and with theater it's so much more personal than TV or movies and stuff, and you see like your favorite actor or somebody you respect or a show you love or just a new show that you grow to love, and you see that in front of your eyes just then, live, which is so cool. There's also the appeal of like concerts and a lot of live things, but then everything is now being documented on phones, which I get from both sides, like pro and con, but it's still quite problematic in a lot of ways. Yeah. But before you said when playing with your family, you said that's how you realized you were kind of interested in performance?
Yeah.
Yeah, so with that, did you go on to do more, like learning more musically, or when did you go into like acting?
So I played the violin. Well, we all started music, me and my brothers, very, very young. So we all started on the Arabic drum, the dirabaki, when we were probably around 3 years old. You know, you'd learn how to keep a beat or how to keep time on that. And then when I was about 7, I started the violin. And and then when I got into high school, I started into doing plays. And I never did a play before. And I loved it instantly. I loved the dynamic. I loved the community. I loved the kind of people. I found myself in them. I found like minds and like personalities, and I found a place for whatever I had been feeling or whatever I had been experiencing that I had not found before. And that was really the turning point. And I was like, oh, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And it was a very easy decision and very quickly made up and very quickly decided. Like, I didn't change my mind. I didn't flip-flop. I wasn't wishy-washy. I was like, oh, I want to do theater. And then I think after doing several more plays over the first couple of years of high school, I said, well, I guess I have to pick something to go into, which is not true, but that's how you think. You think you're like, what do I do? I can pick a thing. Yeah. And so I was like, well, should I do music or theater? And I said, well, if I do theater, I can probably do both, because theater storytelling can incorporate lots of aspects of music, whereas music is very different, and it's a lot more measured, at least in educational purposes in America, so that there's not as much opportunity in schooling for improvisation or exploration. There's kind of like classical route or not, or specifically non-classical route, and also you're kind of alone, and you have to practice. And I don't like to do that. I like to be with other people. So the theater was a natural fit. So I made up my mind then, and the rest. And then I found so many opportunities to bring my musical interests into my theater making, whether it be composing or setting lyrics or playing or conducting or music directing, and I really found a lot of interest in that. Though these days I'm kind of fading out on a bit of that and kind of keeping these interests separate.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, like I quite enjoy, obviously, especially with the band's visit, like some live musicians on stage is always amazing. And and either whether the orchestra, like in Amadeus, the entire orchestra was on stage for the majority of the performance, or they had a thing where it was formed into a pit, so the orchestra were all there, and then the stage, part of the stage went down as if it was a pit, and then people came on as if the opera was happening, and then he was conducting on top of the piano. So then stuff like that, that's also really cool if you can see the orchestra. Like, and so definitely in shows, like also in Great Comet, with they had a lot of instrumental people on stage, and I know that like Lucas Steele, who is my friend and he's wonderful, and he like mentioned that he could also, he's like, oh, by the way, I can play the violin, and then they incorporated that into the show, like a little bit for him to do. So like instrumental, and especially if you can do both, which is crazy and like amazing, then that can really add to a performance, like definitely. And and be incorporated in some way.
In the right hands, it enhances the form of theater telling.
Definitely.
And I wrote an essay about it, and because people don't understand this form.
Yeah.
But it's the important thing is how it should be considered like dance. It should be considered like singing. It should be considered an extension rather than like a divertment. It's not separate.
No.
If used correctly. People go, oh, did you learn the violin for this show? And I go, what the hell is wrong with you? I'm like, does that sound like something you can learn in 4 weeks?
So true.
Smack them in the face. And then some people might say, oh my God, are you a musician? How did you learn how to speak lines on the stage? They also get smacked by me.
Amazing.
And so I needed to write something down about that because people cannot combine the two as like an extension or a deepening of storytelling. They can only go, oh, I see an actor on stage who has stopped acting and has picked up an instrument and is now playing music. Or I've seen a musician that somehow miraculously has learned how to speak English, say the words coherently on the stage.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, with this particular production, that is a bit of a silly question. But also with some other shows, I know that some people, like in Grey Comet, had to learn the piano and the like a bunch of other instruments for like a 4-week run. Like some people did have to do that, but especially with your track, like no way could you just have done that. But especially, but like particularly, you can be both. Like you don't have to just be a musician or an actor. And what I love especially about this show as well is because I know the band are also downstairs, but with shows where the band is on stage, you see them and you appreciate them then and there rather than them being something mysterious that you hear in the background. You're like, oh, I like this music. And
exactly.
Then they're underground or they're doing whatever and they don't get so much appreciation.
And there's a lot of storytelling in the shape of orchestration, in the visibility of instruments being played and being played in certain combinations and being played in certain contrast to each other. And this is all like out of the teachings and the explorations of John Doyle, who's a wonderful, wonderful theater director who runs a theater called Classic Stage Company downtown New York now. But I did a production with him of Allegro, which is a Rodgers and Hammerstein musical, and all 12 actors played the instruments. There was no orchestra, and we were all actor musicians. And so we found different ways in what can the instruments add to the storytelling? Can the instruments be used as different props? Can they be used as a scene partner? Can two characters playing the same instrument intimate something about what they're going through? Can the quality of the instruments say something about the scene? Like the first act of Allegro was set in like the countryside and was more austere and gentle and homey, and so it was more. We orchestrated it was more strings. And in the second act, we were in like the brass city of Chicago, so it was more brass instruments, and it was trumpets and saxophones and percussion. And this is something that when you're able to see it, it tells a whole different story. It deepens the story in a way that no other medium could.
I think it's so important, and there's so much you can do with instrumentation, and a lot of it, like you can really dig deep into that, like the way you incorporated different instruments with different areas or different emotions and storylines or whatever. But also, I love how in theater, obviously some things are very like, this show, you must do this and everything is the same. But particularly the shows that take the actor's advice or incorporate some other talents or things that they might have into the show when either creating the show or bringing on a new cast or whatever, it can really improve and lift the show, taking somebody else's talents or taking the fact that, that they are a musician or bringing them onto the stage is like really, really great and can really make for them for it to be more comfortable and just for the whole thing to be like much more interesting.
If if there's a purpose for it.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of times, especially with active musicians, where someone's like, oh, you could play this instrument? We'll play it. And I'm like, well, what's the point of it? Well, I thought it'd be nice if we had a violin. It's like, no. What's the point? Like, the director or the conceiver has to have intentions for what they use in the show. And that's why I love John Doyle, because I feel he knows how to do the conception of actor musicians in different iterations and uses them to deepen the story and would not use them otherwise. And they're not just there as extraneous, which some people use. So I get asked to do a lot of different actor musician stuff. So I always vet them like that. I go, what's the reason you want this? And they go, for this. And then I'll either, I'll judge based on that. And if they go, oh, they just want the oud because they thought it'd be cool because I play the oud, I go, well, I'm not going to play the oud.
Yeah, if it's something that doesn't really make sense with the story or the situation, that's a bit silly. But that also happens in a lot of, that also reminds me of things in general theatre, especially with music. That happens a lot. But with general theatre, they add a plot line just cause, like something that's like usually you get away with it more in film than in theatre, because with theatre you only have a certain amount of time and you have to be quite direct. But with film, they can add a love interest that which is what I particularly hate quite a lot. A love interest that comes in and then they like immediately get married after like 2 minutes together, and you're like, oh, well then they don't seem very interesting, or like why are they here, or why was this added, and it doesn't develop anything. Something added to a plot that doesn't develop anything in general is just kind of so annoying. Definitely. So also right now I'm trying to do some more shows and theatre and stuff and whatever I can do. And I'm doing Sweeney Todd at my school at the moment.
Wow!
Yes. Did I tell you about that?
I don't think you did.
No, so I'm in the chorus right now because it's a full school production. So there isn't like, so the older people, it's very exciting. So the older people get the main roles, but I know like all the lyrics anyway, so I'm just off the side like mouthing all that. So that's really fun. And we're gonna have like a full-fledged set with like the chair and it falling down onto a beanbag and a whole thing. But we're only gonna get to work with that like 2 weeks before the show, so that's gonna be interesting.
To sing Sweeney Todd is like a religious experience.
Oh
it's
my
just
God.
Something overpowering to sing any Sondheim, but to like be part of like the chorus of singing the Sweeney Todd is an unreal experience.
It's so awesome, and especially the chorus part, because not only is obviously it's Sondheim music, it's amazing, but like, and it's a bit crazy, it's difficult to learn, but it's so good, and the solo parts are great, but there's also a lot to do for the chorus, so the whole, everyone in the show is so greatly incorporated and needed and used in the show, which is so good to do, and I love all of the new things, and like I had only seen the movie and like a few productions of Sweeney, but none, usually more contemporary ones with smaller casts, like the off-Broadway one or my cousin's school production or something like that, so they didn't have all of the songs that they might have had in another production, so they're like dredging out all the chorus songs from any productions and adding them in, which is going to be very interesting. So that's happening in October, but right now I'm at a camp that offers like some sort of theatre thing, and it said it had like a large age range of people, so I came in and everyone is 10 years old. And so I have like my last day tomorrow, and I made a few friends, but with the counselors who are my age. So everyone is 10 years old, and they're doing what they do at this school, which is interesting. Or this camp, they do productions every 2 weeks. So you learn a new show.
Oh, like summer stock.
Yeah.
That's what we call it over here.
Yeah, so you learn a very shortened version of something. So right now they're doing Annie.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm only there for a week. So I essentially have nothing to do. But I'm leaving tomorrow back for another camp, which is great. But I had like a reasonable amount of fun. It was quite interesting, but it was so funny and also really weird because They were all 10 years old.
Yeah.
And they were like, we're doing Annie. And I also wasn't familiar with the concept of like learning a musical in 2 weeks and doing all, like all that stuff. So that was a bit crazy.
It's a different talent.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot, but also a lot of the kids can't follow a script. So that was a lot.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So, especially, I was just like, the line is there. They're like, what page? Sorry, I haven't opened it. And I'm like, what?
Right.
Yeah, which is like so weird because even I did like a production. Like I wasn't that young, but like I did a production. And I'm like completely terrified that I'll miss a line. Like even if we're reading like a book in English class, we're reading Shakespeare or something.
Right.
And like you're a particular character. You're like, oh, I better not miss that, or otherwise the whole class is going to be like, it's there, read this, Not so nonchalant about it, but I'm sure the 10-year-olds haven't quite developed that kind of thing. But also they have like a lot of theatre games beforehand.
Yeah.
Which has been interesting, but the first one was to do with like memory, where you associate like a movement with your name, and then you step forward, you say, I was at the end of the line, so it was like a circle, and whoever was before you, you did their movement and their name, and then whoever was, like everyone that was before you, you did all their names and all their movements, and then you came up with a movement for your name. So I was like, this is the worst game for me, because I cannot remember, I can barely remember their names, but especially not the movements, because they were really obscure, because they are 10 years old. So it was just like, move their hand to the left a little bit, and they all looked very similar. And I was at the end of the line, so I was just like, I don't know. But my name's Ben.
Better stand at the beginning next time.
Yeah, well, the guy, I was like, somewhere, I didn't know what it was, but we were all in a circle, and then the guy moved specifically towards me, because he saw I was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And was like, I'm going to put you at the end of the line. So I was like, thank you so much. Which was just like, I know. But he's a really nice guy, but also, but at this camp, when you come in, they have different things every day. So, like pool noodles?
Yes.
The counselors are standing outside with pool noodles, waggling them, like, in a row. So as you walk in, there's music blasting and, like, pool noodles in your face, and that's the only way to enter the building. And I'm like, this is my first day. This is way too intense.
How traumatic.
Or people like jumping out and grabbing you, or like clapping at you.
Oh my god. This is not my cup of tea.
Yeah, I know. So I walked in, I was like, why? This is my first day. And they're all 10 years old, and they're all clapping and whatever, and with like really bad music choices at the beginning, blasting it on like a boombox, which was just like, which was intense. But hey, how was your day? Hi guys, sorry, I'm not with George, we actually cut off, but we're going to talk again tomorrow because he had to run off for the show, so he has another like 45 minutes tomorrow, but I'm going to try and get through it quickly because I know this is a lot to listen to, even for a podcast. I'm going to try and cut it down to less than an hour and 40 like most of my other episodes, as I've heard that it might be a little bit too long for you guys. So tomorrow I'm going to be recording that, but then this should go into that recording, so sorry for the technical difficulties, and I hope you enjoyed that section, because there's more coming tomorrow. So thank you for being patient. Bye.